If you've ever ventured to put pen to paper, I'm sure you have heard it. That voice in the back of your mind, that creeping sense of doubt whispered in your ear, pouring fallacies into your subconscious, reminding you that it's all been done before. Your favorite author already exists. This hill is too steep to climb. You're bound to fall and make a fool of yourself. You try to banish it, name it after your least favorite character in history, give it a funny accent, put it in a box, put that box in another box, mail that box to yourself, and when it gets there, you smash it with a hammer. Some call it imposter syndrome. I don't know if I believe in that. Others say it's just part of the process, highs and lows, a system of checks and balances instilled in a writer's ego during the journey of telling a story. That constant drone, those incessant questions you ask yourself, who is this character? What is their purpose? Why does this story matter? That is what it's like to write. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Neverland Book Club. Today is a writing video, but more specifically, we're discussing the virulent practice of comparison, the war between ego and craft, and the uncomfortable truth behind the confidence in which some of us declare, I could write a book. It's among common human nature to compare oneself to others, especially when the goal you've had your sights set on has been achieved by someone else, whether that be alongside you or way before your time, giving you a roadmap to the treasure chest. Now, if you are a reader, chances are you've thought it at one point or another. You're halfway through a mystery thriller, maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but at some point you think, hey, I could do this. I could write a book. But here's the thing. There's a difference between thinking you could write a book and finishing one, completing the exposure, realizing this is what I'm capable of right now. Very few actually act on the impulse to climb that mountain, let alone reach the top. Even fewer revise their work, and less so are willing to separate their ego from their work long enough to improve it. And that's where the real gap begins. Now, there's yet another difference between people who decide to write a book on a whim and those who have been writing their whole lives, slowly evolving their own style, developing their voice, and creating a significant progress line from where they started to where they are now. I used to feel uncomfortable calling myself an author. A writer, yes. And I'm grateful I was able to save my written stories, poems, plot ideas scribbled from elementary school to high school to college to my novels now. That's right. Plural. And I've watched myself go from drawing stick figures to being able to follow a Bob Ross tutorial with some ease. But here's the thing. I know I am not Bob Ross. And as far as I've come, I know I have much farther to go. So the idea for this video and this discussion came from something a friend of mine said once. While buddy reading a fantasy novel, we both weren't quite enjoying it. And this person said, well, at least I know I'm a better writer than that. And that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way a little. First of all, this clip came to mind.
This other hat, Max, may I wear it?
No, you may not.
Why?
Because that is a Broadway producer's hat. And you don't get to wear a Broadway producer's hat, son, until you're a Broadway producer.
I had a meeting with someone recently who explained, a writer is a private person. An author is a public person. And that has everything to do with the fact that a writer has something to say, while an author has something to share. To me, an author is someone who has finished something, packaged it, shapes it, defines it, brings it to a state where it can be consumed in its entirety. And that distinction matters not because of prestige, but because passing that milestone changes your outlook on the entire craft. At least it did for me anyway. When you finish something, you're able to step back and see your weaknesses clearly. Pacing issues, flat dialogue, dragging chapters, scenes that just don't quite land. It's humbling, and humility makes room for improvement. I'm sure I'll find more things to refine as I go, areas where I don't even think to look. I went into that cave with nothing but a flashlight and a positive attitude, and although I made it out the other end somewhat unscathed and a bit more privy to the underground layout, there are 100 other little things I would have done differently. Which is why, perhaps, writing a second book is so much harder than writing the first. The first comes with little to no expectation. Everything after has to fill that space on the shelf. I guess ignorance really is bliss, but then so is practicing your craft. What most readers don't realize is that the reason your favorite book feels effortless is because it wasn't. Immersion does not come easy, and it's this practice which makes it feel just as so. When you read Brandon Sanderson, you're not just reading fantasy, you're reading a case of thematic engineering. Anne Rice doesn't just immerse you with plot mechanics, she immerses you with texture, mood, and obsession. Character arcs, emotional beats, dialogue rhythm, structural tension, market awareness, revision, revision, revision. Your favorite author didn't stumble into that by accident. They built it, word by word, sentence by sentence, over pages, over years, over rejections. Manuscripts no one but them will ever read. So when you're reading a novel and think, I could do a better job than this, what are you actually comparing? Your imagination or your executed, revised, critiqued, edited manuscript? Because those are two very different things. Don't get me wrong, confidence is important to maintain, but it can be dangerous because being overly confident in your abilities with anything really can keep you from getting better. If you're stuck in the belief that you're already above it, you stop studying, you stop revising. If critique feels like a threat to your identity, you allow yourself no room to grow. It's easy to read A Twist by Alice Feeney and think, I would have done that differently. It's harder to build a narrative that sustains tension for 300 plus pages without collapse. I learned this the hard way. When querying my first manuscript to publishing houses, there was one that accepted my work, but they had some conditions. Fix this, rewrite this, change this, delete that, then we'll talk. And my first instinct was defensiveness. If I change all of that, it won't be the same story. It won't sound like me. The characters will be lost. After stepping away, after separating myself from the words, I realized something. They weren't trying to attack my voice, they were showing me where it could be stronger. I made those changes and my manuscript was better for it. If someone critiques your work and your first instinct is to defend every word, pause. That defensiveness might be the very thing keeping you from becoming a better writer. I mean, be aware of who's speaking to you. Don't take writing advice from an engineer. That was a joke, my husband's an engineer. So let's answer the question. Are you a better writer than your favorite author? If you're asking me, no, probably not. Are you delusional? Well, I am, a little. I think you have to be somewhat delusional if you're ever going to pursue writing in a professional sense. You're not a better world builder than Brandon Sanderson, a better stylist than Olivia Blake, a better architect than Alice Feeney, or a better atmospheric storyteller than Anne Rice, but neither were they once. Is it possible to reach such a level? Yes, perhaps. At least I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Call me Icarus, but sometimes the sun feels like a tenable goal. Akin to most things that require discipline and practice, you have to be passionate. You have to want to get up in the morning, every morning, with the thrill of improvement, of getting better, of failing, knowing that's part of the privilege of others exchanging their time for your story. Delusion without discipline is just fantasy. There's something else. When you write a character, truly write them from scratch, they feel like they belong to you. They live in your head like flashes of memory. You know them too intimately, and you're trying to introduce them properly to strangers. You want them to have a good first impression, or not. And there's something so beautiful about that. Readers will claim them, interpret them differently, love them in ways you didn't predict. I think of my favorite characters, people I know so confidentially, who respond in the mind of another. I relate with them, I care for them, I want them to get the happy ending they deserve, despite sometimes knowing their end. That is the weight of storytelling, and not every aspiring writer understands that weight just yet. Because once that character is created, they no longer belong to you. They're not just a part of you anymore, and you have to let go. So here's the truth. You're probably not a better writer than your favorite author, but you could be if you're willing to do what they did. Finish something, rewrite it, accept critique, study the craft, separate ego from execution, rinse and repeat. Reframe the question from am I better to am I willing? Willing to write as hard as I can whenever I can. Willing to improve instead of compare. Willing to fail in the eyes of others and risk that possibility of humiliation in the pursuit of improvement. Because that's the difference between you and your favorite author. Talent plays a part, of course, but it's work. The work makes all the difference. Writing was one of my first loves, a story sparking in my young mind like a match struck in the dead of night, illuminating a darkness that otherwise would have enveloped me entirely. Then, as I grew, came the pursuit, the thrill of improvement, the quiet satisfaction of solving a structural problem, the ache of cutting a scene you loved because the story calls for its destruction. It's not glamorous, and it's not always inspired, but it is so honest. And if you're watching this, I have a feeling you care about stories and the nourishment of their production just as much. So tell me, in the comments, has this thought ever crossed your mind? Could you become an even better writer than your favorite author? And if so, are you willing to prove it to yourself? If you're interested in studying the art of writing yourself, consider reading more novels from a writer's perspective rather than a reader's. Some authors I recommend studying include Toni Morrison for her precision of language, emotional weight, and moral depth. Donna Tartt is good for studying slow burn, literary atmosphere, and obsession. There's Gillian Flynn, if you're interested in learning the art of psychological control, unreliable narrators, and you just want to strategically manipulate your readers. And of course, there's Margaret Atwood, whose masterclass I've taken, by the way, which focused on craft awareness, intellectual rigor, and the responsibility one has as an author. And in her words, a word after a word after a word is power. Alright, that's all I have for you today, dear viewers. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed this slightly existential spiral into the psyche of a writer, and please do subscribe. I know this video was a little messy and scatterbrained. Honestly, it was a bit of a brain dump for the way I've been feeling towards writing lately. And so, thank you for just being here and hanging out with me while I ramble. Today's shoutout goes to Evilia Solgos. I'm so glad you enjoy the style and presentation of these videos and reviews. I have a list of books I plan on reviewing in the coming months, but if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. I'll leave you with a quote I live my writer life by, and one I think of every time I sit down at my desk to write. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. That's exactly what I did with my novel, Dancing with Strangers, which is linked below. Perhaps the story you're waiting to read is your own. Stay lost, keep reading. Goodbye!